My fiancée said, "I need time for myself before the wedding," and secretly cheated on me with her boss. I replied, "Okay." Then I used $20,000 to obliterate the entire wedding and all her plans while she was off eating cherries with her boss. My phone screen glowed in the dark room. It was 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, the perfect time for maximum visibility. On the screen was a single perfect photograph from a sun-drenched yacht in Miami. The caption was simple, precise. "Congratulations to my fiancée Chloe and her associate Trevor on a very productive business trip to Miami. And by the way, Jenna, I think you'll want to see this. Hope you two are enjoying your personal space." I tagged all three of them. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, blocking incoming calls from anyone not in my contacts. I blocked Chloe's number. I blocked Trevor's number. I walked to the kitchen, opened a bottle of 12-year-old single malt, and poured myself a glass. The phone face down on the counter began to vibrate silently, buzzing like a trapped hornet, as the calls from numbers I didn't recognize started flooding in. I didn't even look. I just took a sip of my whiskey. The game was over. It started as these things often do, with a lie wrapped in the language of therapy. 3 months ago, our life was by all accounts perfect. Or rather, the brand we had built was perfect. I'm Dylan, 32 years old. By trade, I'm a data analyst. I find patterns in chaos. I build predictive models. My entire career is based on the principle that if you have enough clean data, the truth will always reveal itself. My fiancée, Chloe, 29, worked in public relations. She didn't just work in PR, she was PR. Our life was her greatest campaign. Every brunch, every vacation, every tastefully filtered photo of us smiling was another piece of content for the Chloe and Dylan brand. Her Instagram was a masterpiece of curated perfection. She had a gift for it, I'll admit. She could make a Tuesday night takeout look like a scene from a romantic comedy. I was the quiet, stable partner, the steady hand. I made good money, and I was content with a simple life. She was the star, the social butterfly who craved the spotlight. I thought our differences complemented each other. She brought excitement. I brought security. It seemed like a fair trade. The wedding was 2 months away. I had already put down non-refundable deposits totaling over $20,000. I'd spent weekends looking at venues, tasting cakes, doing all the things you're supposed to do. I was all in. I believed in the brand. That was my mistake. Looking back, the red flags were there, fluttering in the background of every perfect photo. She'd make subtle jokes about my job. "Oh, Dylan just stares at spreadsheets all day," she'd say at parties. "I'm the creative one." It was always said with a laugh, but the message was clear. My work was boring, functional. Hers was glamorous and important. She insisted on handling our social calendar, which meant we only ever saw her friends, people who worked in fashion, and marketing people who valued image over substance. My friends, the ones I'd known since college, were deemed not a good fit for our lifestyle. I went along with it. I told myself it was compromise. But the biggest red flag came the week before her bachelorette trip to Miami. She sat me down on the couch, her face a perfect mask of sincerity. She said, "Babe, I need to talk to you about this trip. I feel like I'm losing a part of myself with all the wedding planning. I need this week to just be me. With my girls. No distractions." I said, "Okay, that's fine. Have a great time." "No, you don't understand," she said, placing her hand on mine, her touch light and performative. "I mean no distractions. I want to turn my phone off to the world. No texts, no calls from you. I just need some space to reconnect with myself before I become a wife. It's not about you. It's about me. You trust me, right?" There it was. The perfect manipulation. The question that makes any disagreement feel like an accusation. If I argued, I was the insecure, controlling boyfriend. If I agreed, I was the modern, understanding partner she could brag about to her friends. So I played my part in her script. I said, "Of course I trust you. Take all the space you need." She smiled, that perfect, curated smile. She had no idea that I was a man who deals in data, and she was about to provide me with a mountain of it. I actually kept my promise. For 3 days, I didn't call. I didn't text. I worked, I went to the gym, I caught up on a show she hated. It was peaceful. A quiet preview of a life I hadn't realized I was missing. I told myself it was just a week, that this was healthy. I was being the modern, secure partner she claimed she wanted. Then, on the third night, a Wednesday, I was scrolling through Instagram before bed. I wasn't looking for anything. Just the usual mindless feed of dog videos, ads for meal kits, and updates from friends. It was a routine, a way to numb the brain before sleep, and then I saw it. It wasn't even from her. An acquaintance of hers, a girl named Madison, who was also on the trip, had posted a public photo. It was a group shot on a yacht, all of them raising champagne glasses to the camera, the Miami skyline glittering behind them. My eyes scanned the faces, and for a second I didn't see her. Then I did. In the background, almost out of focus, was Chloe. She was sitting on the lap of an older man. His hands were wrapped firmly around her waist, resting just above her hips. His face was buried in her neck, a wide grin on his face. She was laughing, her head thrown back. It wasn't an innocent, friendly pose. It was intimate, possessive. My first feeling wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was clarity. A sudden, cold, and absolute clarity. The chaos suddenly had a pattern. The little red flags, the dismissive comments about my job, the obsession with appearances, all of the disjointed data points were connecting into a single ugly picture. I didn't call her. I didn't text Madison. I didn't throw my phone against the wall. The emotional part of my brain just switched off. The analyst took over. I went to my laptop. I took a screenshot. I saved it to my desktop. File name, Exhibit A. I zoomed in. The man's face was clear enough. I'd seen him before in the background of Chloe's work events. Trevor, a creative director at some big ad agency she always talked about, always with a little too much admiration in her voice. A quick Google search confirmed it. Trevor Wells, 40 years old. His bio on the company website called him a brand visionary. I scrolled through articles about his award-winning campaigns. A bigger search confirmed the next data point. He was married. His wife, Jenna Riley, wasn't just a wife. She was a partner at a prestigious law firm. Her professional profile was public, filled with accolades and publications. So was her social media, filled with pictures of their 2 kids and their golden retriever. A perfect family brand of her own. The irony was suffocating. I took a screenshot of their smiling family Christmas photo posted just 3 months prior. File name, context. Jenna. My work mode kicked in. This was no longer a personal crisis. It was a research project. My objective, to gather irrefutable data. I started digging. I went through the public profiles of every single person Madison had tagged in the yacht photo. It was a tedious process, cross-referencing followers and photo tags. Most profiles were private. A few were public, but useless pictures of food selfies, sunsets. I was about to give up for the night, but then I found it. A different girl on the trip, someone I barely knew, had posted a video to her stories. It was only 15 seconds long, a shaky pan of the party on the yacht, loud music blasting. But my eyes weren't on the main action. They were on the background. And there, for maybe 3 of those 15 seconds, you could see Chloe feeding Trevor a strawberry, his hand resting casually and confidently on her thigh. I downloaded the video. File name, Evidence Video 01. Then I found another one on a different friend's public profile. A boomerang clip. Chloe and Trevor were doing shots, their bodies pressed close together as the boat rocked, laughing into each other's faces. The space between them was non-existent. I downloaded the clip. File name, Evidence sur l'autre Video 02. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Project Miami. Inside, I created 2 subfolders, Visual Evidence and Subject Profiles. I organized the files cleanly. It was what I did at work every day. I brought order to chaos. I sat back in my chair and looked at the collected files arranged neatly on my screen. The photo, the 2 videos, the screenshots of his wife's happy family page. It was all there. A complete, undeniable narrative of betrayal told in pixels and timestamps. And in that moment, as the analyst in me surveyed the data, I made a decision. I wasn't going to have a screaming match over the phone. I wasn't going to text her angry, misspelled accusations. Confrontation was what she expected. It was her arena. It would give her a chance to lie, to cry, to manipulate, to turn it all back on me. To make me the villain for not trusting her, for invading her space. That was a game I couldn't win because it was a game played with emotions, not facts. No, I wasn't going to play her game. I was going to play mine. The evidence was the weapon. It didn't need my anger to be effective. The truth was self-evident. My role wasn't to be the accuser. It was to be the presenter of facts. She wanted to live by the public image. She would be judged by the public image. This wasn't a relationship problem anymore. It was a data problem. And I had the solution. I closed the laptop. The decision was made. There was no anger, no heartbreak. Just the quiet, cold hum of a machine that had been given its final logical directive. Chloe came back on Saturday afternoon. She walked into the apartment and dropped her bags on the floor with a thud that seemed to echo in the silent apartment. The sound was heavy final. She looked tan, her hair had those perfect sun-kissed highlights that you pay a fortune for, but her eyes were tired. Not a relaxed post-vacation tired, but the wired, irritable fatigue of someone who'd spent a week performing. She gave me a lukewarm hug, a brief, stiff press of her body against mine before pulling away. It was a hug for a distant cousin, not a fiancé. "Hey," she said, her voice flat as she kicked off her expensive sandals. "Hey." How was it, I asked, keeping my own voice a carefully controlled monotone. I was a blank canvas, offering her nothing to react to. "It was fine," she said, already walking towards the kitchen, not looking at me. "A lot of drama with the girls, you know how it is." "I'm exhausted." She opened the fridge, peered inside, and closed it with a dissatisfied click. "I really got the space I needed, though. It was good for me." She delivered the line perfectly, a rehearsed statement designed to preempt any questions. She wasn't telling me about her trip. She was presenting her official report, closing the case file before it was ever opened. I just nodded. "I'm glad." I didn't offer to take her bags to the bedroom. I didn't ask for details about the drama. I just stood there, a neutral observer in my own home. My passivity seemed to unnerve her more than any accusation could have. She expected questions, maybe even a little jealousy. My quiet acceptance was a variable her social algorithm couldn't process. That evening, she spent 2 hours on her phone carefully curating her Miami photo dump for Instagram. It was a fascinating, horrifying ritual to watch. I sat on the couch pretending to read a book, but I was observing her every move. It was a surgical procedure. She scrolled through hundreds of photos, her thumb flicking across the screen with ruthless efficiency. She selected 10 perfect images of her and the girls laughing, drinking rosé, posing on the beach in practiced carefree poses. I watched as she spent 10 full minutes on one photo, painstakingly using a clone stamp tool to remove what was clearly Trevor's arm from around her shoulder. In another, she zoomed in to crop out the shadow of a man sitting just out of frame. She muttered to herself as she worked. "Ugh, Madison's face looks bloated in this one. Perfect, the lighting here makes my abs pop." It was a masterclass in narrative control, a complete fabrication of reality presented as an authentic memory. Finally, she wrote a long, heartfelt caption. It was a literary work of art in its own right, a testament to the power of female friendship and the importance of disconnecting to reconnect. She used words like soul sisters, unbreakable bond, and my tribe. She ended it with a hashtag that felt like a slap in the face, #HeartYourGirls Getaway. It was a work of fiction, and it was brilliant. Within the first hour, it had over 1,000 likes. Her audience, her followers, consumed the brand, and they loved it. She looked over at me from the armchair where she'd set up her command center, holding up her phone like a trophy, the screen glowing with manufactured joy. "What do you think?" she asked, showing me the post. Her voice had that familiar, eager tone she used when she was fishing for a compliment. "Looks nice," I said, not looking up from my book. She waited. The silence stretched. She seemed to need more. She needed me to validate the lie, to co-sign the fiction, to participate in the performance. "Aren't you happy I'm back? You've been so quiet all evening. Are you mad at me for going?" She prodded, her voice taking on a slight edge. "Just tired," I said, turning a page. "Long week." She huffed a small, sharp sound of exasperation and tossed her phone onto the chair. It was the noise of an actress who was getting no energy from her scene partner. "Well, I'm going to take a bath. My back is killing me from that cheap hotel bed." She stood up and stretched a deliberate, languid movement designed to be watched, her body silhouetted against the lamp. It was another performance, one I had seen 100 times, but this time I didn't look. I didn't react. I just kept my eyes on the pages of my book, my mind processing her every word and action, comparing it to the cold, hard data stored in the folder named Project Miami. Her attempt at seduction having failed, she switched tactics to passive aggression. "You know, you could at least try to be a little more welcoming. I just spent a whole week away from you. I thought you would have missed me." I finally looked up from my book, meeting her gaze. My expression was blank. "You're the one who said you needed space, Chloe. I'm just giving it to you." My calmness was a brick wall she couldn't find a foothold on. She expected a fight. She wanted a fight. A fight would have been normal. It would have been passionate. It would have been a scene she knew how to play, where she could be the victim of the needy, insecure boyfriend who couldn't handle her independence. My quiet compliance was ruining her script. She stood there for a moment, her mouth slightly open, searching for an angle, a line of attack. Finding none, she just shook her head, a look of genuine confusion mixed with contempt on her face. "You're being so weird," she muttered, her final attempt to label my behavior, to put me in a box she could understand. Then she turned and walked to the bathroom, the door clicking shut behind her. She left her phone on the coffee table. She didn't even bother to hide it anymore. That's how confident she was. That's how little she thought of me. She saw me as a stable, predictable, and frankly boring part of her brand, the reliable foundation upon which she could build her much more exciting life. She had no idea that the foundation was about to develop a catastrophic crack. I let her settle into her bath. I could hear the sound of the water running, then the soft splash as she got in, followed by the faint, tinny sound of the music she was playing from her phone's speaker. It was a playlist she'd titled Vibes, full of breathy female vocalists singing about empowerment and self-love. The irony was a physical weight in the room. I didn't move. I sat on the couch, the book still open in my lap, its words a meaningless blur. I was just waiting. I wasn't anxious or angry. The emotional storm had passed days ago, leaving behind a cold, clear, operational calm. I was simply a man waiting for an appointment. My appointment was with 9 p.m. I watched the clock on the cable box. 8:58. 8:59. I watched the numbers change. 9 p.m., prime time. The peak hour for social media engagement. Her audience was captive. Her stage was lit. The show was about to begin, but she had lost control of the script. I picked up my own phone. The glass felt cool and smooth in my hand. I unlocked it with my thumb, the haptic buzz a small, familiar confirmation. I opened my photos and navigated to the folder. Project Miami. It was all there, organized and ready. I selected the screenshot from Madison's post, Exhibit A, the one where Chloe was on Trevor's lap, her head thrown back in a laugh that was anything but innocent, the one that was perfectly damningly clear. I opened Instagram. My finger hovered over the plus icon to start a new post. This was the point of no return. This was the moment the plan transitioned from theory to action. I pressed it. I selected the photo. It filled my screen, a grotesque parody of the happy couple photos that populated my own now obsolete feed. I began to type the caption. My thumbs moved slowly, deliberately. There were no typos. There was no hesitation. I had composed the words in my head 100 times over the last 3 days. Congratulations to my fiancée, Chloe. I paused, letting the word fiancée hang in the digital air. The title she wore so proudly, the cornerstone of her brand. And her associate, Trevor. Associate. A cold, professional word. The perfect, sterile description for the man whose hand was on her waist. On a very productive business trip to Miami. The sarcastic quotes around business trip were the first scalpel cut. And by the way, Jenna, the final piece, the catalyst, the person whose ignorance was the foundation of their entire deception. I think you'll want to see this. Hope you two are enjoying your personal space. The final twist of the knife using her own manipulative words against her. The caption was complete. It was a perfect piece of destructive prose. Short, factual, undeniable. Now for the final step. I tapped the Tag People option. I touched the screen over Chloe's smiling, deceitful face. Her profile popped up. I selected it. Tagged. I tapped the screen over Trevor's grinning, predatory face. I typed his name. His profile appeared. I selected it. Tagged. Then I tapped the empty space next to them. I typed Jenna's name. The lawyer. The wife. The mother of his children. Her profile appeared, her smiling face a beacon of the life they were betraying. I selected it. Tagged. I looked at the post one last time. The photo. The caption. The three names linked together in a digital triangle of deceit. It was a clean, perfect piece of data. There was no arguing with it. There was no spinning it. It was simply the truth weaponized. My thumb moved, hovering over the blue Share button in the top right corner. This was it. The final move in a game I never wanted to play. I thought about the last 3 years. The shared jokes, the future we planned, the $20,000 in non-refundable deposits. I thought about the woman I thought I knew, and the stranger who had taken her place. And I felt nothing, just a profound, chilling sense of necessity. The feeling of a project finally completed, a case file closed. I had simply presented the facts. The consequences were no longer my concern. I pressed the button. The small, insignificant click of the screen was the quietest explosion I had ever heard. The post was live. The data was public. The truth was out. There was no satisfaction, no rush of adrenaline, just a profound, chilling sense of release. I wasn't destroying her life. I was taking back my own. The chaos began almost immediately. It wasn't a slow burn. It was a digital flash flood. Before I even had a chance to put my phone down, the first notification appeared. It was a like. From Madison, the girl who posted the original photo. A silent, swift confirmation that she had seen it, and in her own way, was choosing a side. Then came a comment from one of our mutual friends. What is this, a question mark hanging in the digital air, pregnant with the drama that was about to unfold? Then the calls started. The first was from Chloe's best friend, her maid of honor. I watched her name flash on the screen and let it go to voicemail. Then another call from a number I recognized as one of Trevor's work colleagues. I ignored it. Then a text from a number I didn't know. Dude, you better take this down right now. I saved a screenshot and blocked the number. My phone was a cascade of notifications, a waterfall of other people's panic. But the call I was waiting for came at the 10-minute mark. An unknown number. I answered and said nothing, just listened to the silence on the other end. Is this Dylan? The voice was female, steady, and cold as ice. It was exactly how I imagined a high-powered lawyer would sound. It was Jenna. Yes, I said. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, controlled and even. There was no hysteria, no screaming. There was only focus. Thank you, she said. That's all I needed to know. Then she hung up. That one call was the only validation I needed. It was a twist I hadn't fully anticipated, not a hysterical screaming wife, but a calm, calculating professional who had just been handed Exhibit A for her divorce proceedings. My post wasn't just revenge. It was a legal document. It was a tool, and she knew exactly how to use it. My post had become a wildfire. In 20 minutes, it had over 100 comments. Chloe's friends were either silent or posting vague comments of confusion. But strangers and friends of Jenna were ruthless. They were dissecting the photo, pointing out his hand placement, the look on Chloe's face. And so, with a single click, the stage for this tragedy was moved from a private space to a tribunal more powerful than any other, the Court of Screens. In the old world, a confrontation like this would happen behind closed doors. A screaming match, tears, denial. The person with the loudest voice or the most convincing lies might win. But that's not our world anymore. What I had invoked was the modern-day town square. the ultimate arbiter of social accountability. The 30 people at a party might be influenced by social ties, by awkwardness, by a desire not to get involved. But thousands of people on the internet, they become an objective jury. They only judge the evidence presented. My screenshot was the irrefutable proof. Chloe's carefully curated brand, built on thousands of filtered photos and fake captions, was demolished in seconds by one unfiltered, undeniable truth. It proves a fundamental rule of the 21st century. Your reputation is no longer what you say it is. It's what the internet can prove it is. I heard a shriek from the bathroom, a raw, wounded sound that was completely devoid of her usual performative grace. Chloe had obviously seen the post. She came running out, a towel wrapped around her, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. "What did you do?" she screamed, holding her phone, which was now a strobe light of notifications. "I posted the truth," I said calmly, taking a slow sip of my whiskey. "Something you seem to have a problem with. You're trying to ruin my life." "No," I said, standing up. "You're just finally facing the consequences of your own actions." I walked to the bedroom and closed the door, leaving her in the living room with the shrill, unending symphony of her social implosion. I could hear her pacing, sobbing, making frantic calls that, from the sounds of it, were going straight to voicemail. Her perfect world was burning down, and she was beginning to realize why her friends weren't rushing in with fire extinguishers. She was experiencing the collapse of her fragile social capital. Why did her soul sisters suddenly go silent? The answer isn't about loyalty. It's about a concept from sociology. There are two kinds of social currency. There's bonding capital built on genuine trust and shared history, the kind of friends who would help you move a body, no questions asked. I had a few of those. Chloe had none. Then there's bridging capital built on surface-level connections, on networking, on what you can do for other people, and how good you look in their photos. Chloe's entire network was bridging capital. Her friends were followers. They were there for the brunch photos, the vacation tags, the proximity to her curated lifestyle. When the brand collapsed, when the lifestyle was revealed to be a lie funded by my income and her deception, the capital evaporated. They didn't betray her. They simply acted according to the terms of their unwritten contract. When the benefit is gone, the connection is over. It's the harsh reality of building a life on a foundation of likes instead of love. She eventually left after an hour of screaming and crying and blaming. She didn't go to a friend's house. As I later found out, none of them were answering her calls. She went to a hotel. The next morning, I was methodically packing her things into boxes. Her designer clothes, her dozens of shoes, her collection of motivational, quote, coffee mugs. As I was taping up the last box, I got a text from a mutual friend. "Trevor got kicked out last night. His wife is filing for divorce, and Chloe was fired this morning. The PR firm said she was a reputational risk." That afternoon, I faced her one last time. She came to the apartment to get her things using the key she still had. Her face was pale and swollen, her usual mask of perfection completely gone. She stared at the neatly stacked boxes that contained her life. "Was it worth it?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Was what worth it?" I asked, not stopping my task of wiping down the now empty bookshelves, destroying everything, my job, my reputation, us. I finally stopped what I was doing and looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time, I saw her not as my fiancée, not as a brand, but as a person whose choices had led her to this exact moment. "I didn't destroy anything, Chloe," I said, my voice even and devoid of malice. "I just held up a mirror. You're the one who shattered it." Her world, once a vibrant, bustling city of social events and online adoration, became a ghost town overnight. The implosion was as swift as it was total. She lost her job, the PR firm citing a morals clause in her contract concerning public conduct that brought the company into disrepute. Trevor, in a desperate attempt to save his own skin, blamed her entirely in his divorce proceedings, painting her as a manipulative opportunist. He blocked her number. Her so-called soul sisters, the ones from the yacht, stopped answering her calls. Their unbreakable bond, it turned out, was as fragile as a champagne flute. She was left alone in a sterile hotel room surrounded by cardboard boxes filled with designer clothes that now felt like a costume for a life she no longer lived. My world, in contrast, became quiet. And in that quiet, I found peace. The first thing I did was delete my own Instagram account. The entire app felt tainted, a monument to a life that wasn't real. The silence it left was deafening at first, then beautiful. I started reconnecting with my real friends, the ones Chloe had deemed not a good fit for our lifestyle. I called my old college roommate and we went for a hike, something Chloe had always called dirty and pointless. We didn't talk about her much. We talked about work, about sports, about the simple, uncomplicated things that had formed the foundation of our friendship for over a decade. It felt like coming home. I started reading again, devouring novels instead of news feeds. I spent a whole weekend in my garage building a bookshelf from scratch. I felt the satisfying ache in my muscles, the texture of the real wood under my hands, the pride in creating something solid and tangible. As I stained the pine and assembled the pieces, I realized it was the first thing I had done for myself by myself in years. I was building something real in the space once occupied by a fiction. About a month later, I was in a coffee shop downtown, the one near the courthouse. I was just grabbing a coffee before a meeting when I heard my name. Dylan. I turned. It was Jenna. She looked different, lighter. The stress and tension I'd seen in her family photos were gone, replaced by a look of serene confidence. She smiled when she saw me, a genuine, unforced smile. "I wanted to thank you again," she said, walking over to my table. "You probably get tired of hearing that." "Not at all," I said. Are you doing okay?" "Better than okay," she said, her voice clear and strong. "You gave me the push I needed. The evidence was so clean, so undeniable, he couldn't fight it. The divorce was settled in record time. I got the house full custody and a very generous settlement." She paused, stirring her own coffee. "You know, the funny thing is, he tried to blame me. Said I was too focused on my career, that I didn't give him enough attention. The classic script. I've heard a version of it," I said, a wry smile touching my lips. She looked at me, then her gaze direct and insightful. "You deserve better, Dylan," she said, her voice softening with an unexpected kindness. "You're a good man who was with a bad partner. Don't let her make you think otherwise." And that was it. It wasn't a pass. It wasn't a proposition. It was just a simple, profound moment of mutual respect between two people who had survived the same storm and reached the other side. We finished our coffees, talked about law and data and the absurdities of modern relationships, and then we went our separate ways. As I walked out of that coffee shop into the bright afternoon sun, I realized something important. My actions hadn't just been about revenge. Revenge is a hot, messy emotion. What I had done was cold and precise. It was an act of self-preservation. I wasn't just ending a relationship. I was reclaiming my life from a narrative that someone else had written for me, a narrative in which I was a secondary character, a prop for her story. She had built a brand, and I was just a part of the logo. By presenting the unfiltered data, I wasn't destroying her life. I was simply resigning from her company. As I sit here now, months later, in my quiet, uncluttered apartment, I sometimes think about the whole insane series of events. It's easy to look at a story like this and feel a sense of satisfaction, of sweet revenge. The cheater gets exposed, the liar loses everything. It's a clean, simple ending that provides a satisfying rush. But the feeling I'm left with isn't triumph, it's just quiet. A profound sense of quiet in my own life. I realized the core lesson wasn't about winning or losing. It was about a fundamental misunderstanding of a single word: respect. I used to think respect was something you earned through compromise and patience. I thought if I was just supportive enough, just stable enough, just loved her enough, she would eventually respect me. I was wrong. Respect isn't the prize you get at the end of the game. It's the price of admission to even play. The moment it's gone, the game is over. You just have to be brave enough to walk off the field. And it brings up a question I've asked myself a few times. The story brings a sense of satisfaction because I won. Because my life got better and hers fell apart. But let's imagine a different scenario for a moment. What if after I posted that photo, it didn't go viral? What if her friends rallied around her and successfully painted me as the villain? What if I had faced professional backlash myself for being unprofessional? What if my life had gotten harder for a while, not easier? Would my decision still have been the right one? The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. We are so often blinded by what's called outcome bias. We judge the quality of a decision based on the result it produces. If it works out, it was a genius move. If it doesn't, it was a foolish mistake. But the true value of the action I took wasn't in the fact that Chloe's life imploded. The value was in the moment I chose my own self-respect over a toxic, dishonest peace. The victory wasn't when she got fired or when her friends abandoned her. The victory was when I pressed share. In that instant, I took back control of my own story, my own integrity. The success of that decision isn't measured by her failure, but by the peace I regained for myself. The karmic fallout was just a bonus, a satisfying epilogue. The real prize was the freedom that comes from refusing to live a lie no matter the cost. The last I heard, Chloe had moved back to her hometown. She's working in retail. Her social media is gone. She's for the first time in her adult life completely anonymous, a ghost in the machine she tried so hard to master. I don't feel happy about that. I don't feel anything about it at all. Her story is no longer connected to mine. The data set has been closed. Me, I'm good. My life isn't curated or filtered. It's just mine, and it's real. It's filled with the comfortable silence of reading a book, the satisfying mess of a woodworking project, and the easy laughter of friends who have known me for 20 years. Yesterday, I was cleaning out old files on my computer to free up space, and I found the folder. Project Miami. I hesitated for a moment, my cursor hovering over it. I clicked it open. The files were all still there, the photo, the videos, the screenshots, the data that changed everything. For a second, I felt the faint echo of that cold clarity I had felt that night. Then I dragged the folder to the trash can icon on my desktop. A small pop-up asked, "Are you sure you want to permanently delete these items?" I smiled, a real smile this time, and I clicked empty trash. It was a quiet, simple act, but it felt like the final chapter. I closed the laptop, walked to the window, and just watched the real, unfiltered world go by. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors no filter could ever replicate. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely and utterly free.